Good afternoon, YouTube. Today we are going to ask a question. We're going to ask, are you a Vashti? It's the story partially said about the wife of Ahasuerus in the beginning in the book of Esther. Let's read from verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 127 provinces, that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. So this is something I've seen rich people do. When they want to have a feast, they do something not only to make themselves happy, but they try to do something that makes other people also happy, because they can make themselves happy the whole time. They have enough money to do that. But you can't always get people together at a certain date at a certain place at the same time. I've seen my boss getting some chicken for the whole working environment, everybody over there, and then everybody is having a feast. Verse 4. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. That's not a short time period. See, he has been ruling and extending his kingdom for 3 years, and he wants to show people what he did. Obviously he doesn't need to do work, but it was some work to get it where it is at that moment. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cord of fine linen, and purple to silver rings. Okay, I'm not reading that whole verse. Verse 7. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse from one another, and royal wine in abundance according to the state of the king. So this was royal. They've got a lot of expensive stuff that they used during that feast. Verse 8. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to the king Ahasuerus on the 7th day. When the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded those men, 7 men, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king. Okay, I didn't read all the names over there. To bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew the law and judgment. And the next unto him was those men, list of 7 men, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto Queen Vashti according to the law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Verse 19. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus. And let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. We've got to ask ourselves, is this not us in that position? Is God pleased with Christianity today? In many ways, probably not. So He's going to give our estate to somebody else. And that's a dispensational reality. But I would like to look at the deeper realities of what's exactly going on in that verse. See, the king was preparing this wonderful feast. He has been working for 3 years on his kingdom, and he wanted to show the people his great kingdom. And the thing that was supposed to be the most easiest thing for him to show the people was the wife that he kept for the past 3 years. Wouldn't that be simple to do? Of course it's supposed to be simple to do. But Queen Vashti refused. And it's similar to God. When He tells the stars, line up, they do it. When He tells the lions to roar, they do it. When He tells the ants to march, they do it. When He tells the flies to move around, they do it. But when He talks to us, then we don't hear a thing. Why? It's not because we do not have ears, it's because we do not listen. That is sad. That is very sad. The queen was wearing a crown. She was supposed to appear with the crown royal. A crown is headwear. Okay, now keep your hand in Esther. Let's turn to Ephesians and chapter 6. Ephesians and chapter 6, let's read verse 13. Wherefore take unto you the whole armour of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Read verse 17. And take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. On your head, you as a Christian, you're supposed to be wearing the helmet of salvation. So, sometimes in your life, you're not wearing the helmet of salvation. You're not wearing the helmet of salvation at work always. And people at work, they don't always know that you're saved. And you're not always wearing the helmet of salvation in the street always. The people in the street don't always know that you are saved. And the other thing about wearing the helmet of salvation is that at some point you've got to share with people how to be saved. And it's sad that sometimes we don't wear that helmet of salvation. Might that be the reason why God is not pleased with Christianity today? I think that might be the problem. There is a way of salvation. You do know that we've got a gospel on which the people's eternal destiny depend on, but we are not willing to share it. Think about that. Think about that. On the 7th day, this is verse 10 in Esther, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded all those men, chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look on. Now when you're fair and beautiful, when you add a crown to that, that multiplies your glory. You can't appear in a place without being dignified because you've got a crown on. Even though you might feel not very dignified, you've got a crown on. People will say, "Oh, that person has a crown on." They're not going to say, this is just some slave, or this is just some maid servant. She doesn't really mean a lot. No, they're not allowed to feel that way. They're not allowed to think that. If they think that way, King Ahasuerus is going to have a problem with that. There's no such thing as undignified evangelism, depending on exactly how you do it. If you're not willing to distribute a few tracts or do some street preaching because you think it's undignified and because you don't want to be ashamed, maybe that's not a good idea for you to feel you're being undignified, because Jesus said, We're not supposed to be ashamed of him. See, this crown is something that Queen Vashti probably could have gone without in her life. If she never became the queen of Ahasuerus, she wouldn't have the crown. It's possible that she made the choice to get married to him. But of course she will make that choice. And secondly, he bestowed the crown to her because I could have chosen some other wife. He could have chosen somebody else. And she is worthy to appear in the presence of the king. At the end of the book of Esther, it's this whole mission for Esther to appear in front of the king. And here Vashti gets this free opportunity to appear in front of the king, and she doesn't take it. Obviously, she probably wanted to talk to her people, to the woman for who she had made this feast, because it says she was having this feast with the other woman in another place. So maybe she was talking with them, maybe she was busy with the social atmosphere. And that's something some Christians get caught up with. They get caught up with the social atmosphere. They're trying to make it socially more pleasant at what they call the church. Now, I'm all for building relationships, but when you get together as saints, doctrine and evangelism and planning how you're going to approach your city comes first. You learn to know each other on the way. I would like to know how much a person loves the Lord by how he explains to me what he understands things in the Bible. There's so many topics in the Bible to discuss, and there's so many doctrines to teach each other. We don't have time for talking about cars and talking about fire and talking about board games and TV shows and cheese and cupcakes. If that's all you're talking about, maybe King Ahasuerus will be displeased with you, because you're not appearing before the king with the crown royal, the helmet of salvation. Nobody's gonna know you're saved when you're talking about that stuff. Long ago I was in this gathering church building where they said we should by all costs try to avoid speaking Christianese. So we should try to avoid the terminology that's in Christianity, so that nobody eventually talks about any type of Christian thing. That doesn't make sense. We should constantly be speaking Christianese. If people don't understand us, they should simply learn the terminology. It's like working at a bottle store. You need to learn what kind of bottles there are and what the names of the bottles are. I don't understand all the lingo they use, and I feel out, but I know it's not a big issue. I can just learn this stuff. Another thing we can look at is that maybe Queen Vashti was ashamed of being the queen. Maybe she didn't like the idea of wearing a crown and having people look at her and say, oh, this is the queen. That, of course, is the last thing that she's supposed to feel. King Ahasuerus has been working 3 years on this kingdom. This feast, one of the reasons for it was to show everybody the things inside the kingdom. When she decided not to appear in front of everybody, it was like she telling the king and everybody else, I don't really care about the things the king has been busy with for the past few years and has been busy with in the current time frame. I'm not really that involved. Think about how the king must have felt about that. He thought this was his wife. He's telling her intimate things because your buddies don't always know the things you're telling your wife. Now obviously you don't tell her everything that's going on at work, but you tell her enough for her to know what's going on when you say, oh, Joseph died yesterday. Or Joseph lost his finger. Something that happened at my workplace, but that's another story. One day when we get into heaven and you and God sit on a bench and you have this conversation and you tell God, yeah, I didn't really evangelize. You think He might look at you and say, you didn't tell anybody about how my son suffered for you on the cross, bled for your sins, and paid the penalty that you deserved? That's gonna be sad. That's gonna be very sad. Another possibility is that Vashti might have felt that this is too boastful. Vashti might have felt, I'm showing people I think too much about myself. And they're going to say, look how much she thinks about herself. She's just bragging about all this. Well, obviously that will be the wrong thing to think. Because it's Ahasuerus that gave her the command to come. And secondly, it's Ahasuerus that is the cause of her having the crown to begin with. So there's no reason for her to feel that way. So if you feel, I don't want to share the gospel because I don't want to make people think I'm proud. I don't want to make people think I'm bragging the whole time and maybe they're even going to be offended. My dear friend, there's no pride about that. It's not our salvation. Jesus gave it for us. We're just simply sharing what we received for free. Not only is God being dishonored, you're keeping the way of salvation away from other people. Nothing can make you truly be unjust by doing this, sharing the gospel. It's time we pick up a Bible and go to our lost friend and tell them, I want to tell you something. And it's gonna be cool. A gospel sustaining him for the rest of his life. What a precious thing. Amen.